And so, let me see. The Roman Empire. And so this is kind of another long time period and a vast area. And so much of what we know in Western civilization does come through Rome. We talked about Greece and its influence on the thinking, the government, a lot of philosophy, a lot of things, many contributions. And the Romans are equally influential, but in a slightly different way. And as the Greeks were great warriors, conquered much of the known world, the Romans were as well. But they were a little different about it. And one major difference I could say is that the Greeks were really about learning. They were doing mathematics, philosophy. They were doing a lot of different kinds of things. They were doing epic poetry. They pretty much, for our purposes, invented modern theater and so on. They did a lot. What Romans did was that they, like the Greeks, conquered much of the world, but they were builders. The Romans are famous for being builders. And we have a lot of their buildings all over the Middle East, into Asia, all the way up into places like England. There's a place up here, I'll show you. See that line right there that divides England and Scotland? And Scotland was really kind of more populated and more culturally aligned with the Nordic countries. And just a second. And so they didn't like the Romans, actually, one little bit. And so one of the Roman emperor at the time, built a wall all the way across from sea to sea, and it's called Hadrian's Wall. And it still stands for the most part. And that was the northernmost province of the Roman Empire. And we call it England. Romans called it Britannica. We still call it Great Britain. Out of the Romans. So we'll find in this, looking at this, we'll see a lot of words and a lot of ideas and a lot of buildings and a lot of things that influence and have affected modern life. And so I'm going to show you this. So anyway, they pushed up into what was modern day Germany. It got really kind of tough through here. Romania. Whoa, I wonder where that word came from. Romania, from Rome. And so you see, they went in and they took Greece and what was all of the Etruscan culture, France, Spain, Northern Africa, Egypt and the Middle East. And so Xander, what's this place here?
That's the center of the Empire of Carthage, which was pretty big, pretty not pretty big, but pretty strong. For it was like the head during the time of like Roman expansion. It was one of their main enemies, and
Hannibal, yes.
Well, he was one of their generals, who was like known as one of the during that time, and he took the elephants through Algeria, up through Morocco, through Spain, and to France, and took them over the Alps. And that was like the first direct attack on like Roman soil that they experienced in that given amount of time.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Thank you. Yeah, this was not easy. The Romans had opposition from a lot of rival empires, but I think that we have a saying here. This will show up in some of the examples that I have for you. There was a time is really kind of about, say like 25 BCE until about maybe about 300 Common Era. That's a rough time period, over 300 years. And they call that time the Pax Romana, because with the exception of rival empires like Hannibal from Carthage. Go ahead.
Well, Pax knows for peace and life.
That's exactly right.
So it's like probably during a certain point during the extension, they're probably like, all right, there's no real need for us to go out of our way to like come. I think they're because Romans were really big on taking what they have and like getting Roman citizens. Romans would encourage their citizens to go out into these conquered areas and set up their own little towns, and that's why you have a lot of Roman buildings up in like France and like all these areas, because Roman citizens went up there to actually start living there.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. And even early on in what we call the imperial period, which really kind of begins at 27 BCE, Pontius Pilate, for example, in the Bible, the Roman magistrate in Jerusalem, and he did exactly just like what Xander was talking about. Moved his family there, and there were other Romans around, they really did. They spread out, they settled it, they built. And that is a major characteristic of the Roman Empire. And what I'd like to add to that about the Pax Romana, and it is the Roman peace, aside from a few rival civilizations that didn't particularly like being under Roman rule, it was mostly peaceful. And so they call it the Roman peace, and it lasted for centuries. And what we'll see here is actually kind of explains some of that. And so anyway, you could see it was expansive, and this is Trajan, and this is in the early 2nd century. And this is really kind of about the high point. And then what you start to get is a lot of what we would call pushback from North Africa, from England and France, yes, Germany.
I think it's like probably one of the biggest fights, or one of the most like most known fights, it's it's the Teutonic fight between Teutonic Force or something like that.
Teutonic, yeah.
Teutonic Force, and they went through there with they were already pretty exhausted. We always talk about it in our history lessons. They're already pretty exhausted at that point, so they're trying to advance through the like big forest in Germany. And
Yes,
there's one where one of the biggest fights happens. There's this huge statue in the middle of the forest, and my parents are both archaeologists. And every time we're down there, we're looking at it. They drag me there. It's kind of interesting, but
it is. And yeah, this was where on this northern part, we talked about Hadrian's Wall here, but yeah, they ran into a big problem in central Germany, and this was one of the few places where Caesar himself actually got defeated. And this is a big part of German history too, what Xander's telling you. It's like, and so anyway, yeah, all of that is true. You know, there were reasons why they couldn't go farther, but terrain, fierce warriors, etc. And so, with that being said, I want you to see it. They have a pretty good hold on Egypt as well. So all of these former places that we've studied so far come under Roman rule. And so here is, I'm gonna, Whitney, you're here.
Hello.
Hi. Well, I'm glad you're here. As you might have heard, I got to mark you absent because you're physically not here, but I'm glad you're online. And so anyway, here's a model of what Rome looked like at the height of everything. And so in the 4th century. So this is like, right as I was saying, like the early 300s, you know, this is, and so anyway, look at this place. And we have here, this is a place called the Circus Maximus. If you guys ever see the movie Ben-Hur, this is where this happened. Circus Maximus, we still use that word. Circus means like kind of like a big festival or a big display. But and here we got what we call Flavian's, 1717, the Colosseum. Flavian's amphitheater, that's what I was trying to say. But here, look, they have these things, these 2 big buildings. This is almost like a modern, present day, 21st century city. And this big, the baseball diamond field, that's Busch Stadium, kind of looks like Busch Stadium, the old one. And this would be the football field or something, the soccer field. Anyway, I talked about Pax Romana. One of the things that they learned pretty early on was that in order to keep their grip on power, they needed to keep their own population happy first and foremost. And so you see, they devote a lot of time, effort, energy, resources to entertainment kind of stuff. And so with the Colosseum, this kind of is a place where, I should say, it started off kind of benign, but as the empire aged, the entertainment kind of got more cruel and brutal. And so anyway, you'll find stories about this. Yes, Sander.
I mean, they've also put a lot of effort into
when they used to flood out the Coliseum. They literally used to pull water for ships to be able to drive in the Coliseum. So they like in this Coliseum, they enacted like fights between ships, which is I mean, we don't even have that right now. I don't even know how much number it would take for us to like flood out Bush Stadium and have a ship around. I don't think that's anything we think.
No, yeah, exactly. And that's all true. You guys hear all what it said? Yeah, it was a remarkable engineering feat. And that's why I was saying Romans were builders, they were engineers. You know, we can talk about the higher order thinking of the Greeks, but the Romans were like practical. If the Greeks, say for a strained analogy, were the research scientists, the Romans were the ones that put a lot of that stuff to practical application. And so they were like technology. And really, that's kind of what we talk about. This is technology. And it is a result of a lot of people who do physics have put this thing together so that you can actually run data through these tiny little chips. Actually, it's getting to a point where these things are molecular in how they move data. Bottom line, that's the research that goes into this. The applied technology gives you smartphone. Same way with the other parts of this. People do rocket science. They figure out how to get out of the Earth's gravitational pull. People in technology say, hey, we can put satellites up there because these rocket scientists have shown us how we can get up there. So that's kind of the relationship between the Greeks and the Romans. And as Andrew was saying, they would flood this out and they would have naval battles in there. They would put ships in there. They would reenact some of the Roman victories at sea. They did things a little more sinister, and it's in the historical record, was that as time went on, like I say, it got more brutal. I've seen some sociologists kind of compare some of that to maybe what we go through today, that it just took more and more to keep the population entertained. They were bored with last year's naval battles. They wanted to see something killed, so they started killing animals and having hunts out there where they would put lions and tigers and then a guy with a sword or something. Bullfights, we talked about that kind of part of that. Out of the Minoan culture comes into Rome, ends up in Spain, and so on. And then it got even, the debauchery got greater over time, where they were actually taking political prisoners like Christians, as they say, fed them to the lions. And so anyway, and they had gladiators. You guys know about gladiators, I'm sure, where they would actually have fights to the death. See, as I say, we used to have boxing matches. Now we got WWF. We used to have scary movies like Psycho. Oh my goodness, you could see the blood. You guys ever see Psycho? Oh, 1959. You see, it's even before my time because I was only 5 and I couldn't watch it. But at any rate, it's a horror movie, but really just a tiny little bit of gore, where this woman, you could see a hand with a knife, and then the shot would be with blood going down, being washed down the drain. Didn't see any stab wounds, didn't see anything, but it was horrible. It was frightening. It was the scariest movie of its time. But now, you know, you get stuff there. that'll scar you for life. Chainsaws. Anyway, bottom line, that was kind of sort of what was happening here. Just got way out of hand. But I'm telling you that because that's part of the story. But it was an absolute engineering marvel, Coliseum. And they had, I have to go back, see all slides. Here is, no, that's in Pompeii. Do I have it? At any rate, they've restored this, and they are restoring it as much as possible. And you can see from the ruins exactly what they did and kind of how they did it. As Andrew was saying, they had a floor. It wasn't just the dirt, it was a floor. And under that floor, they had all kinds of tunnels and rooms and pathways and things to kind of make the show go on. And it was watertight. They would pump in water and have naval battles, stuff like that. And what we found out too, and this is a kind of a lot of archaeologists are finding new things. A recent discovery is that this had something of a first century retractable roof. It wasn't like modern day sports venues like in Milwaukee, and I forgot what they called it. Used to be Miller Park, but you know, in Arizona, retractable. But it was made out of canvas, and it was there to keep the sun from beating down on the people inside the audience. Second thing was that they found out that it was designed in such a way, it was made out of cloth, a heavy canvas, but it let light through. So it didn't make it so dark. And the other thing is that they found out that air could move through this. So getting back to quiz 2, I was talking about all of the different kinds of disciplines that you can research. This is like a really good example of what we're saying here. It's all of this engineering stuff. Oh, while I'm on quiz 2, I don't have them all in. I looked at some of them, and I probably won't be able to post a grade until Friday. But I gotta wait till they come in. It's been kind of spotty. But and if you haven't turned it in, please send it via email. The site is closed, but you can still read the prompt. And secondly, put it in a PDF or a docx. I've been getting some Google Docs, and they're on who sends it to Google site, and I can't get in there and stuff like that. So PDF, docx, more compatible with Canvas. And so anyway, yeah, this is, you know what made this possible? Or another thing I want to talk about, we could talk for a whole semester on the Coliseum. It's just so remarkable. Wanted to kind of point out something here. We got archways, and we have here what are really kind of decorative columns. They're not really so much about the support as they are stylistic, decorative. But you know what made this possible? A Roman invention. concrete. They figured out how to do this. So all of the previous cultures we've seen, if they wanted something permanent, they either found rocks and stacked them together, or they were good stone cutters and assembled their buildings. Concrete, you could shape it. We still use it today. Another influence of the Roman Empire on today's world. And if you guys know, as you guys probably know, what you do with concrete, it's in liquid form. You put it in a form, which is another name for a mold. Pour it in, let it dry, pull the form away, and there you have it. And so that allowed them to do so many things. And the other thing that it did was that in another form, in a form of cement, you can make mortar, which is a kind of cement that doesn't have much aggregate, but you can actually more or less glue stones together, or in some cases actually bricks, which come out of clay, which come out of when we talk about the Etruscans and terracotta and all this stuff. So this is the engineering of the Romans. And so kind of give you an overview here. They were builders. And this Circus Maximus, this is more or less used for horse racing and chariot races and stuff. So this is like Talladega, if you will, Daytona Speedway of the day. And so anyway, you can see it's well developed, constructed. We only have an idea of what this was, and there's probably more. Yes.
Yeah, also, it's called Circus Maximus, just nice to get understanding. It's not really, it might look a little small there, but it actually held 300,000 people.
Yes.
So like that's almost half. If you think about it, that's like
Yes.
insane. Just thinking about it. So these arenas, also the Coliseum, was probably as big as some of the biggest sports arenas today. The Circus Maximus. My mom always used to tell me about it. It was her movie, favorite movie with Ben Hur. So she always used to tell me about this, and I was amazed that you can fit almost half of the people in a
Yes.
stadium.
Oh, yes, everything. Spot on. Thank you. Yeah, and I guess I will go back to that original point too, was that if you could keep the population entertained, and it was really important. And so as the Romans were spread out across this vast empire, would be people, they would have their own tourist system and stuff too, and people would go to Rome. Rome, they used to have a saying, all roads lead to Rome. And so there were people from all over the empire, so they could build this up. For 500,000 people, of course. And it worked. It kept people happy. Entertainment. Now, what do we got? We got this thing. But yeah, that's how it was. It's all true. It's huge. They built on a scale, and they built over such a wide range of territory. It was quite amazing. And so this is a Temple of Portunus, and this is roughly right in the middle of what we would call the Republic, Roman Republic era. And that overlaps with what we saw with the Etruscans. But Rome kind of builds out, they become this basically the dominant city state, and they develop their own government, population grows, et cetera, et cetera. But the Roman Republic lasted until roughly 27 BCE. And what happens in the Roman Republic was that the generals actually had a republic, which was kind of like the US, where you had senators and you were governed and you were independent. You were governed up from the people. It was much more democratic, was government by its own people, which is what a republic means. And it means that it doesn't have any outside interference. Stand alone, not ruled by another country, not colonized. And so when you see countries and they put the word republic in their name, that's what they're talking about. Republic of Congo, not Belgian Congo, not anything else. It's their own country, self-governed, not a colony. Republic of Korea, and we are a republic too. That's a Greek idea as well, by the way. The word republic comes right out of Plato. But Roman Republic falls partly because the generals become too powerful. Caesar is the chief powerful guy, Julius Caesar. And if you've ever seen the Shakespearean play or read anything about this, basically, he got killed on the steps of the Roman Senate, and a big gang of powerful guys stabbed him to death, including his stepson. And so after that, they were ruled by what they called a triumvirate, which was actually 3 generals. And they kind of shared the power for a while. And 2 of them sort of survived, Mark Antony and Octavian. And they went to war with each other, and Octavian won. Mark Antony was connected historically and romantically with Cleopatra, by the way. So anyway, Octavian wins out and he becomes the emperor, the first emperor of imperial Rome. And so that lasts all the way out till the end of the Roman Empire, which is in the 4th century-ish. A lot of debate. But bottom line, and he called himself Caesar Augustus. And he was the ruler when Christ lived, or at least for a part of his life. And so anyway, that's the politics. But the politics influence the art and the building too. And all of this stuff about the Colosseum and Circus Maximus and stuff, that all comes out of imperial Rome. And so the empire, they go all over the place. This is Republican era. Pompeii, major city. We call it Roman because it wasn't Etruscan, but basically it was during the time of the Roman Republic, 70 BCE. And anyway, what we got here, well, let's show you some of this stuff. Pompeii, who knows about Pompeii? Yeah, Doc, you know. Kate? No, wait. Hallie. You're Hallie.
I just know the basis that like the city was destroyed by volcano eruption.
Yes, absolutely. Big J, got some. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, that's what happened. Mount Vesuvius, 79 BCE. There's actually an Amazon Alexa commercial. Alexa. let commercial about that. Dad's trying to be real smart and impress his kids. So he asked Google, what was the name of the volcano? When did it? Anyway. This was buried under a tons and tons of ash and lava from Mount Vesuvius. It was one of the, it was a major tragedy, and it was a tragedy that because Roman Republic and the people of the Italian Peninsula were very literate, they recorded a lot of this. They wrote about it. They told about it. We know a lot of things about it. And so anyway, they've been excavating this. Archaeologists have been digging, and they find more stuff all of the time. And so this is an aerial view. And here's some more Pompeii, and they call that Late Republic because it's before the generals. And here is a peristyle of the house of the Vetii, okay? Mid-2nd century BCE. And so anyway, they lived a lavish, they were prosperous. And so more of the excavated area, atriums, atria, would have gardens, would have places to soak up the sun or relax in the shade. These were really, it was really quite prosperous. This is kind of funny here. Roll in the Pompeii amphitheater. And this was obviously before Mount Vesuvius. And so anyway, this is really kind of funny because what we see in the amphitheater is really that same kind of thing that we'll see in the Colosseum, where we have warriors engaged in battle. And so it does predate the Colosseum, but as I say, it's part of the culture. We got this evidence here. And so you want to see some of these. This is the actual website from Pompeii. And it's got some beautiful pictures and a lot of information about sort of the latest. But as you can see, a lot of it's in Italian too. But anyway, it's a beautiful site that gives you a pretty good idea, up-to-date status of what's going on in Pompeii in this day and age. And so let me get back to the share there. Okay, you guys at home, you guys see that? And so anyway, let me just say, this is in France, and as Andrew was talking about, they built all over the place, and the empire spread, the culture spread with it. I don't think that this light box, this electricity was there originally, but just say. But you can see this is right out of Greek architecture. And as I was saying earlier, yes.
You guys also call it
That is exactly what this is, an aqueduct. And aqua is the Latin for water. That's why we even have, and it kind of persists. I was That's a good time to make this point. A lot of Roman words persist in modern languages, and we have, especially in three specific languages, Italian, Spanish, and French. And we call those the Romantic languages. And probably the closest one to the original Latin is Italian. And that's Aquafina. Sure that you've drank this or at least seen it, and means fine water. Aqueduct, what is a duct? Yes, sir.
Council, I think it comes from the word encourage. I think it means like the direct translation means something. But dog, I don't know that. Conjugated, but I don't know which case. But it means water, like something that pulls water somewhere. But that the direct translation is probably like something that carries water.
Absolutely, it pull and all of that. And my understanding, and help me out here because I'm like old money. So, but the other thing is passageway. A passageway to pull something, to get something from one place to another. We have duct work in the ceiling to put hot or cold air into the room. That's duct work. We have, and it's used a lot in anatomy where we have ducts in our bodies. It's absolutely. And if you want to, or if you're good at, you don't have to study medicine, are you?
No.
Oh, you would have a head start because one of the main tools in medicine is that they use Latin almost for everything. And they use Latin because it is a so-called dead language. Nobody speaks it, and well, people know it, but it's not used in trade, commerce, communication so much. But the meanings are fixed. That's what happens with a dead language. With a live language, the meanings change. They're fluid. English is a very live language. And to give you an example, just in my lifetime, a lot of ideas and words morph into something else. Rap, we know what rap is. Music, we we got rap artists. When I was your age, rap meant I'm rapping on the tabletop. It meant it was like sort of like tapping. We said something was cool or hip or something. Those meanings change because it's a live language. And it's in popular culture today, they're really expanding the meaning of a lot of words. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that doesn't happen in Latin. So their meanings are fixed, and the language is so beautifully put together that you can take two ideas and put them together in one word. Aqueduct, perfect example.
The grammar is also like really well defined and easy. Like
Yes.
compared to like German. Like German grammar is like hard. German grammar is super hard. So learning Latin was a lot easier because it's also the same thing where it's fixed, where you don't really have a lot of words that you could use in multiple ways, or like cases you could use in multiple sense context. So like it's pretty well set, which I mean the words are all pretty hard to learn because I mean it's completely new, but besides that it's actually pretty nice, and you can get a nice overview of what the language actually is.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I love what you said about German. It's why my German is like. But there is one connection, or there is it's a unintended pun, but there is a connection with how like Latin is set up and German. And that is that you can keep putting syllables on each other. You can end up like a German, you can have a word that's like 20
Yeah, that's why
characters long.
our like the words like I think English language has like 3 times the words than the German language. Like just like words together.
Yes.
It just becomes more also because like we have 3 cases in like neutral, feminine, masculine, and then you also like the words. So it's a lot easier in Latin than it is in German because in German it also sounds weird and then all of a sudden like irregularities and stuff like that. So
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, look at all this stuff we're talking about. It all points right back to Rome. And for you guys, and we talk about pulling water or a pathway for pulling water, and what this is, and this is still here. We still have some of these. And this is in France. And we see the Roman arches, which is their architectural. We see that this is made of brick and mortar, which is another Roman building material. And he says it's in 3 stages, but what is going on here is this. The Romans knew if they were going to create an empire, they really needed, as Andrew was saying, they told people to go move out and live in these places. And in order for them to have that kind of migration, they had to make the places out there in the rest of the empire livable. And again, taking the idea that you take care of the population if you want to keep the peace. One of the most essential things you need to have a city or a population or sustained life is water. And so what you see before this time is that every town, every city is built by a source of fresh water, a lake or typically a river. These guys figured out that you could go into the Alps and catch the melting snow, which happens constantly. You can catch that fresh water and move it hundreds of miles if you create an aqueduct. And so over the land, it would be like a gutter, say. And it would go for miles. And then when you have something like this, like a valley or a river crossing, you'd have to build this to get that water from here to there and onto the town. And so they could start building cities in places where you could not, places that would not sustain a population. That didn't happen before. We've seen a lot of engineering with water. The Egyptians were phenomenal in how they would manipulate the Nile, flood the rice fields, drain them out, stuff. And we saw irrigation systems in Mesopotamia. But this, they're moving water. This is the Roman Water Company moving water to a place that they build somewhere in France. Amazing feat of engineering, and how it moves is what Xander was kind of alluding to here. It's gravity fed. And so they had to have the engineering skills to actually keep this going downhill, usually by 1 or 2 degrees. It's all you need to make that water run the right way. But to do 1 or 2 degrees for tens, sometimes hundreds of miles, that is an engineering feat that had not been seen. And so this kind of stuff was all over the place in the Roman Empire. They did a lot of things to make the places they conquered more livable. And you can go to England. One of the places in England, this is an interesting little sidebar. They had sent a lot of people into modern day England to live there, and they created, like, we still have it too, baths. That was a common amenity where they would have a common bath. People would go in, some hot baths, put your coals on, heat the water. But they were ancient, what we would call spas. And so moving water like this was how the Roman Empire took shape. It's how they could sustain it. It's how they could keep the population for all of those centuries. And so this is still late Republic. Oh, no, this is early Imperial. What they do too, I got a little mixed up there. Sorry. They started building these monuments all over the place. And this is Porta Maggiore in Rome. And so I'll kind of move up here a little bit. I know I'm bouncing around, but sorry. We got a lot of stuff to look at here. Yeah. The Arch of Titus. So I just showed you an arch. They built memorial arches like all over the place. I showed you Arc of Triomphe in Paris. That wasn't built by the Romans, but it was stylized. It was a Roman invention. And so this is the Arch of Titus. And so this is basically it. It's just a big thing. You can walk through it, and it is like in its own way, its own kind of billboard. I'm the Emperor Titus, and I reign supreme. I am a great leader. And here's the other side of it. And you see they, it would adorn these with low relief sculptures and faux columns and so on. And so anyway, as I was saying earlier, this is the kind of architecture that you'll find not only all over the empire, but people were still building these kinds of monuments up to very recently. And so the Arc de Triomphe, what was it in 19th century? Paris. But anyway, you can see they're all modeled after that Roman imperial monument style. I got something else here. This is another low relief. You can see the kind of detail they had. And in fact, it's even still around after, because it's out in the weather. It's like subject to the forces of nature. But anyway, there's the spoils of Jerusalem. See, this is another thing that they would do with those arches, is that they would memorialize victories as well. The Pax Romana, but it didn't mean that there weren't skirmishes around. You know what they call today, by the way, the world since 1945? You have disagreement on this. The Pax Americana. after the Second World War, there were two major world powers, and that was the Soviet Union and the US. But no more great wars have erupted in 75 years. Not since 1945. There have been skirmishes and war. I don't mean to minimize that. There's always conflict all over the world. Latest in the news, Afghanistan, but there's conflict. It's ongoing, but there has been no world wars. And a lot of people ascribe that to the American dominance, if you will. But see, this is Titus, and they're taking out, look, the menorah. We got a lot of things. We got people blowing trumpets, but they're actually walking off. They are looting, they are pillaging. And so the triumph of Titus, again, one of the things I want to point out here too, and this is important. We'll see a lot of Roman relief sculpture, and it will depict historical events. But this idea of a scale to symbolize importance, that doesn't happen anymore. Everybody is to scale. We don't see like a big giant king and all of these little people running around. It's actually much, much more realistic in that sense. And so there you go. Oh, Jerry, just saying. And so this is a funeral relief of an official in the Circus Maximus. And so, yeah, they would memorialize a lot of things and stuff. But here's where I wanted to go with this too. Column of Trajan in Rome. And this is another kind of monument that you'll see. We saw, for instance, a lot of obelisks from ancient Egypt. We see archways and columns out of the Roman culture. And what you have in this, on this, typically is a spiral frieze, which is this. And here's a detail. And you see, again, it depicts all of Trajan's accomplishments. You know, his victories. When the country was prosperous, they'll show, just like in ancient Egypt, they'll show the wheat harvest, all of the livestock and everything. This is, Trajan is great. And so anyway, here's some battle and its aftermath. So here we go. Roman warriors that you see around here, dead people. Wounded Romans, more details. And so, although I talk about the prosperity and the greatness and the riches and things, a lot of times the bulk of the images come out of battles. And so, column of Hadrian, etc. And here is what I want to show you. All of these columns from all over the world, I just did images, Trajan columns. So we call them Trajan columns, but they're all over the world, all different kinds of things. And again, in Paris, they have at least one Trajan column that they made too, just like the Arc de Triomphe. And so I'm going to run this back a little bit. And we're talking about building. And here This is one of the most noteworthy Roman buildings, aside from the mega structures and the aqueducts and a lot of other things, the marketplaces and things. Pantheon. And this was a temple. And it was a temple to honor the many gods in the Roman belief system. So pan means the whole thing, broad in scope. Like if you pan a shot, you do this, or if you do Pan Am, it goes across the country, all across America. Pandemic, a disease that spreads out wide and far. Pantheon covers a lot of gods. And so anyway, you could see it's of the Roman, it's of the Greek style here, but the back part of this is pure Roman. And what they do, this is a model, an illustration. And so this is a cutaway view. And you can see this is still in existence. You can go visit here. It's quite amazing. And what they did, and in here, they were in the walls are actually tombs of great Romans and a few other people since the Roman Empire. But they have this too. Here are the people, the tourists. You can see the scale of this. And it is a Roman dome. And they make domes. Again, concrete engineering, they do a lot of things that can only be imagined. Let's call it an oculus. And basically, it's just a hole in the roof. Why would you have a hole in the roof? Lighting, primarily, exactly. Lighting, no electricity. Candlelight only gets you so far. Oculus, and that comes out of the same root word for eye. And how can you see what it's like? So anyway, yeah, that's what it does. And this thing is so well engineered, even though it's a large hole, it's high enough that even when it rains, the water dissipates before it hits the floor. So it becomes humid in there, but it's not like it ever floods out. It's really quite that high. And it lights up the interior quite well. Again, engineering. I'm gonna figure this stuff out. And you could see this is 125 CE. I'm gonna show you this too. And they have a fountain in front. Rome is a city of fountains, as they say. They have fountains all over the place. It was one of the things that the Romans did to adorn their city, but also those aqueducts kept Rome supplied with fresh water, so they could actually engineer stuff like this, running water fountains. They had plumbing. They were actually quite remarkable in their engineering skills. And so a lot of these fountains are adorned with sculptures, and some date back to the Roman imperial period, and some of them actually were retrofitted in the 16th century by such artists as Bernini. He did a lot of fountain sculptures and things, but bottom line, it adorned the city. It was a work of art, And actually, during the day, people could bring their buckets up and fill their vessels with water. Maybe the amphoras that we see culture. And so we got that. And on top of this, what do we have? An obelisk straight out of Egypt. So these cultures, they exist in different places in different centuries. But in a lot of ways, they build one off the other. One may be a little more philosophical, one may be more engineering. They're all of them, somewhat warrior cultures, because that's sort of the human history. If you start building something, there's going to be some people that will want to steal it from you. Take it. You got a nice home there. I think I'll kill you and move in your house. So anyway, a lot to talk about. I'm glad we got to talk about the language. I'm glad we got to talk about the engineering. And I want to talk about the painting somewhat, but it's 10 after. It's Wednesday. It's nice outside. And you guys have any questions for me? Bye. So with Cal, Xander, a few others help, I think we were pretty clear. No questions. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here.